Welcome to my TED Talk video. I'll be looking to the side fairly predominantly throughout this video. My laptop has all the dialogue on it. We're going to be looking at the questions surrounding, we're going to be looking at two questions. Both of them are framed around the topic of grading. And we'll just dive right in. I'm going to use quotes from the resources that I kind of allocated towards this assignment. So yeah, let's begin. Question 1, what is the emotional and psychological implications of grading? I'll begin with talking about Alfie Kohn. He's an American author and lecturer who encourages progressive education and differential learning methods that challenge the status quo of education in general. So this is his first quote, and the beginning of the quote starts out by saying, grades tend to diminish students' interest in whatever they're learning. Every study that has ever investigated the impact on intrinsic motivation of receiving grades or instructions that emphasize the importance of getting good grades has found a negative effect, which isn't overly surprising when you think about it. When you have the pressure of judgment within a specific framework such as grades, the interest in the subject can easily be overshadowed by the possibility of receiving either a good or a bad grade. Students can tend to lose sight of whatever they're learning, of the learning opportunities that they might be able to engage in, and instead they focus on how they can most effectively and through the easiest means possible achieve the grade that they desire, whether that grade is an A or it's just a passing grade. In either case, that's the focus. The focus is on the objective, which is a good grade. So this is the second quote. Grades create a preference for the easiest possible task. They, if you impress upon students that what they're doing will count toward the grade, and the response will likely be to avoid taking any unnecessary intellectual risks. And this is key. This is key. If the purpose of learning is for the sake of grades alone, then learning can lose value, or can lose its value in the face of success. There's a difference between being academically successful and being impacted by meaningful learning. Grading can then be identified as having a rather large psychological impact on students because it constrains them to sort of a specific outcome, and the outcome would be, for most students, hopefully it would be that they want a good grade, or hopefully on their part at least. So when there exists the chance that a student would forego engaging with material in a personal way because of the risk that what they will produce will not equate to a good grade, when there is that chance, I think it's easy to see then that grading can have a fairly negative impact on the psychology of students in connection to their own learning. Third quote, grades tend to reduce the quality of students' thinking. We kind of already touched on this, but just to emphasize, or at least focus in on what the quality is that's really being impacted. It's the quality, I think, of critical thinking, the ability to see a single topic, event, or subject, or figure from multiple perspectives. Be able to think about it critically and see it as a whole beyond just the expectations that a specific grade might warrant. So grades tend to reduce the quality of students' thinking. I wholeheartedly agree. I think it can very much so diminish a student's quality of thinking, at least in a larger context. So I don't have a lot of time, so I'll maybe skip past a few of his quotes. I'll say this one last one just because it's quite good. This is the beginning of the quote. Once we're compelled to focus only on what can be reduced to numbers, such as how many grammatical errors are present in a composition or how many mathematical algorithms have been committed to memory, thinking has been severely compromised. which again, this just sort of reinforces what I've already said, in that grades can create parameters which restrict students in the ability to think creatively and to engage with the material authentically, which I think is an important consideration when looking at assessment. So I'm going to move on to question 2. Question 2 is, can grades incentivize students to engage with the material? I'm going to be drawing from Doris Geide-Stevenson, who is from Weber State University, and she writes about how grading homework assignments can either impact student achievement or prove to be a detriment to student motivation. She's talking about in connection to an economics class in a post-secondary setting, but I think the points she makes can be applied to education as a whole, including high school, middle school, elementary. So this is the quote. The fact remains that grade incentives may not produce any impact on student achievement, but are very costly in terms of instructor time. Thus, it is important to find the optimal mix of feedback and use of instructor time in those classes. Now, this might seem like a bit of an aside from the question, which originally was, can grades incentivize students to engage with the material? So this may seem like an aside, but if grades reduce the ability for an instructor to craft lessons that are worth assessing, then the incentive that may have been created by a well-made lesson is lost in the time spent allocating grades to students. So grades can not only prove detrimental to students, it can impact teachers, and that impact then just keeps flowing down the line, and it eventually impacts students as well. Again, I feel like my time is kind of running short, so I'm gonna finish this video with this final quote, and it's by an author called Duryee Crooks, and he wrote an article called "Marks and Marking Systems," and the quote goes like this: "If marks are not necessary to effective teaching and learning, much time and energy spent in efforts to improve them has been largely wasted. The opinion that marks are a hindrance to the free intercourse between teachers and pupils is prevalent in many academic circles, and the idea is that they divert attention from education itself." I somewhat paraphrase the end of that quote. But in saying this, I want to finish the video by saying that, for one, I could go on for quite some time about this, but I won't. There's enough literature on this to fill a library, but in my mind, the purpose of assessment, now that we've looked at these questions, I think the purpose of assessment is for the sake of motivating intrinsic or natural learning. It's learning that exists for the sake of knowing something that you did not know before. To try to numerically represent this existence of learning and quantify its purpose is to lose sight of the true value in acquiring knowledge, which is that knowledge promotes personal growth. It's not just for jobs, it's not just for careers and money and these sort of social implications. Knowledge is for personal growth, in my mind. And I believe grades can reduce the ability for that knowledge to impact individuals with regard to their own personal growth. There does exist the possibility to craft a more natural and authentic form of assessment, where students can help to design the assessment and reflect on its purposes. The end of that was a quote from Cohn, Alfie Cohn, who I started the video with. And I think he's right. You can create a collaborative sort of partnership where the teachers work in connection with the students to create a form of assessment that is authentic, fair, inclusive, and can represent a majority, or not a majority, but a diverse group of learners, I should say. And yeah, I'll end the video there because I feel like my time is up. I'll provide links to the resources that I used to create this video in the kind of the details below. Thank you for watching, and